Unsolicited advice.
What you whispering for? Yo, what's unsolicited advice? Take it or leave it. Ooh, I found out the other day that dating is expensive. Most of the time, if you go on a date, you probably have to at least have, I'd say, about $200 on you to have a decent date. Let's, maybe movies and a, dinner and maybe some type of maybe drinks afterwards or some little small event or something. But you're gonna need at least at the minimum probably $200. You want to make sure you have enough money at the restaurant so you and the lady can eat and have whatever you want. The movies ain't cheap, so you're gonna at least have to have about 40 for the movies, and because you got to pay for two tickets is like $20. She may want some snacks or refreshments or something. You just want to make sure you got it just in case. And then if you want to go to a bar and have drinks, or maybe go somewhere and maybe catch a live band or something, you probably gonna have to pay for parking. You might have to pay for admission. So yeah, you're gonna need at the minimum probably $200 or more. So for you that are single, that probably doesn't apply to you, because you probably can have $20 in your pocket and have a good time. It's kind of, you go from 200 to 20. So, but if you plan on dating, you don't need $200 to find love. In fact, that might be the fastest way to go broke and single, is spending money. You're pretty much giving out free dates. So dating today is more expensive and more practical. It's more transactional. Inflation is out there. Everything costs. So it's not just hitting your grocery bill; it's hitting your love life too. A casual dinner and drinks that costs about, like I said, used to cost about $40. But right now, like I said, it's close to almost $200. And that was back in like 2015. You probably can go get the 2 for $20 at Applebee's, and then and have enough money for drinks. $40 right there, bam. You still got, if you got 200 on you, you still got 160 left to, I don't know, surprise her with something. I don't know, but or go finish paying a bill or something. Social media, it pressures. Social media pressure, it means dates aren't just about like connection anymore. It's like mini photo shoots. They just want to get together and take pictures and stuff. So it pushes people towards, trendier spots where, it's aesthetically pleasing, so they can take pictures of their food and the environment. You used to just go to your favorite restaurant and just sit there and talk and eat. It might even be a mom and pop place or a nice little diner, but you just wanted to be with who you wanted to be with. And then you got the online dating apps, that creates a first impression arms race. Flashy outings can feel like the only way to stand out, especially if you've already been talking the whole time on your dating app. You've already gave them all the information that they need, verbally. So now you're kind of just sitting there looking at each other. But economic stress is changing relationship goals. For some, dating has become a resource exchange, stability, lifestyle, or networking in return for companionship or intimacy. But people spend more, I would say people spend more up front trying to impress. They spend more time up front trying to impress. But that money often doesn't translate to real connection. I mean, when the money stops, so does the interest. For most. So people, for some reason, but they feel pressure to spend on dates because you're trying to prove that you can. The main thing is you're trying to prove that you can take this person out and that you can take care of them. You can do things for them. That's usually, in a guy's perspective, that's what it is. Because traditionally, you're supposed to ask the woman out. Traditionally, you're supposed to pay for the meal as a man, Yeah. And Don't get me wrong, people love to pick and choose when things are supposed to be traditional. So keep that in mind. So you see, you see other couples, they post the rooftop, dinners, luxury trips, surprise gifts, all on social media. So even if it's staged, it sets an unrealistic, it sets an unrealistic hurdle that you have to cross as a man, because women are sitting there scrolling and seeing this, so they're trying to figure out how you're going to wow them and show them that you're worth their time. So it's like, damn, now I got to do all this stuff, and all I'm doing is trying to get to know the girl and see if we have a connection. But you have to stand out. All these other guys are throwing all this stuff at this woman, so she's looking at you like, what do you have to offer? It's almost like when in the medieval times when people walked up to the king and they had to, do things to curry his favor or whatever. So you're not just dating one person; you're competing against dozens of other people. Trying to win by offering their flashiest, first date. And not even just a first date. They can offer more than just a first date. Then there's that fear of being seen as cheap. Many believe that a modest date means you're not serious, even though the real test is just to see if you connect and not if you're spending a bunch of money. Now, you do have some girls they'll play this little role. Oh, it don't matter. We can just go get some coffee or something. I've tried that before a couple of times. And a lot of times if you do that, most of the time they stay on their phone. They're not really engaging. They're not really talking. They're trying to see what you're going to do to keep their interest. And we'll get to that. And then you have relationship influencers that are online. Kind of what I'm doing right now. But you also have the ones that are very negative, that will just only give you one side of it and almost try to coach you into being demanding. So they blur the lines between like romance and luxury marketing, making pricey gestures. So they try to tell you, oh, well, if this person really cares about you, they need to do this, this, and this, and they need to go here, and they need to buy this from there, and it's too much. So spending becomes a way to prove success or desirability, especially, if you're competing. All it's showing is, oh, I'm successful and you should view me as desirable. For some, that's enough. You never know. For some, that's all you need. But there's a lot of practical things that you can do with the right person. There's a lot of low-cost romantic dates that you can do. One thing, especially in the spring and the summertime, is you can grab some food. Y'all both can go to the store, grab some of your favorite things. I think that's fun. It's like almost like a DIY. Y'all both can go to the store, grab some things y'all like, some things you like to eat and drink. Get you some wine and stuff. Maybe make y'all own little makeshift charcuterie board. And you can go do like a sunset or sunrise picnic, and it sets a real chill mood. You've already bought all your stuff. You put it in the cooler, you set it out, you get everything. You can sit there and eat and just enjoy the weather. Enjoy the weather. If either one of you have a dog or you both have dogs, it's a perfect place to get your dogs out and, they can enjoy the weather with you. It's a fun little date. Another one, if you're safe and if you agree to it and you feel comfortable, is you can cook together at each other's homes. You can get bring your recipe or bring the food. You can shop for the ingredients. You come in, you can cook it. They can cook their part. You cook your part. Y'all sit there and eat it. Find y'all a nice little movie. That's a perfect cheap little romantic date. You could do art walks, like gallery, go to the galleries and look at art, things like that. I would probably save that for people that are into things like that. Some people are not, that culture, they'll look at that as boring. but other people love art. They love to look at art. They love to go and view things like that, you know, and it sparks good conversation, you know, and it shows, like I said, it shows culture without the price tag, you know, especially if you know what you're talking about. Another one, which is my favorite because I love the nighttime, is you can go do stargazing, you know, like go look at the moons and stars and stuff. You know, they got apps that you can upload, and you know, you can get you like a little blanket or whatever, or you know, find you like get you some chairs, find you like a nice little open spot, maybe in the cul-de-sac or somewhere, you know, out there in the country where you can just see all the stars or whatever. And you know, you could just sit there and try to see if you can catch any of the constellations and stuff. Now, I know there's a free and cheap one, but you can add your own little spin to it. You know, you can, you know, bring you some music. Like I said earlier, you know, maybe I'll go get y'all like a little sweet treat. You know, a little ice cream or something. Bring it back, or you know, whatever your little, you know, whatever your favorite sweet treat is. You know, a nice little snack or whatever. Another one is like those wine or chocolate tastings, things like that. A lot of women love those, you know, going, especially wine tasting. They like to go to those vineyards and stuff, wineries. You know, some places have chocolate tasting where they have the fruits and the dipped in chocolate and stuff. I think that's a great, you know, that's another way to culture yourself, get out, do something different. Board games, you can do like a board game or puzzle night, but be careful. Know the person that you're with, because some people are too competitive, and that can turn into an argument, or it can turn into like a misunderstanding or something. Some people take stuff like that very seriously. So make sure it's somebody that just wants to have fun and have a good time. You know, you know, stay away from Uno, stay away from card game like spades and stuff like that. Just do board games and puzzle games and stuff like that. Like, keep it simple. You know, Wii bowling or something. I don't know. Stay away from spades and Uno and stuff like that. I don't know. Just stay away. You know, anything that's going to cause an argument. Don't do it. Local events. You could do free local events. You know, sometimes they do like free concerts, outdoor movies, festivals. You know, those are good. You know, those are good, especially if you're in a small town. You already, you know where to go. You maybe know some of the people out. You know, that helps with other conversations and link up with other people. It's a nice little thing. You know, I think that's good. Another one that's my favorite is bike rides and coffee shops. I like stuff like that. You know, bike riding. You know, or go somewhere. You know, ride a bike somewhere. I love coffee shops. You know, I love to get a good cup of coffee and just either conversate or you know, read a book, or you know, read something, read the news. You know, that's, you know, the older I'm getting, the more I appreciate things like that. I really do like it. Farmers market. You know, y'all can wake up on a Saturday morning to get together. The farmers market thing, you ain't even really got to dress up. You know, you can wear something casual and fun, you know, like casual and comfortable. You know, you can go and just look at the stuff that they have for sale, and, you know, fresh produce, and, you know, maybe you can pick some stuff to do later. You know, you get you some fresh fruit, maybe take it home, make y'all some sangrias or some make you like a little fruit bowl or something. I don't know, or you know, get some cheese or some shit. But it's a fun thing to do. Like I said, at one time, I remember I went and I thought I wasn't gonna like it. Man, I loved it. I ended up loving every little bit of it. What else? I mean, you could do volunteering. You know, there's bowling. You know, bowling's a cheap thing to do and it's fun. Some people love playing pool, like any type of activity like that. You know, any type of athletic activity. There's some places where you can do putt for pretty cheap, pretty decent price. You can do putt golf. There's ways to have fun and do dates without feeling like you're just wasting a bunch of money. But you need to make sure that these are the right type of people that you're taking out. That's the mistake that a lot of people make. Know who you're dating. Some people don't appreciate stuff like that. You know, they look at stuff like that as boring and, you know, I need to be wild. I've been on better dates. You know, it gets complicated. So, you know, make sure you're screening for partners who value connection over cash, or, you know, connection over money. You know, listen to their values. You know, do they talk more about experiences, emotions, goals, you know, or do they talk about material things or status? You know, people who value connection often highlight quality time. You know, they like stuff like that. They like quality time. You know, usually homebodies, like the things I mentioned earlier, homebodies, like girls, people that are introverts and homebodies, they prefer things like that. You know, they don't want to be around a bunch of folks. They kind of like to keep things intimate and quiet. Uh, you know, pay attention to how they suggest dates. You know, are they excited about simple, low-key activities? You know, they talk about the stuff that I mentioned earlier. You know, that's a good sign if they do. Watch how they spend. You know, if you try to take, if you know, if you're dating a girl and she says that she needs to pick up some cleaning products, you say, oh yeah, you know, I'll take you to the Dollar General. You know, it's just on the back street behind me. You know, and she look at you crazy like, no, take me to Target. You got to be careful about the dates you take her on. You know, she not looking for no discount. She like what she like. You know, she's not trying to, you know, and I'm not saying you have to budget, but, you know, she don't care how much she's spending. You know, she's looking at the brand of store that she's going to versus the product that she needs. And vice versa, even with men too. Pay attention to how they treat others, you know, because, you know, I've been on dates where we went out and they were rude to the waitresses and waiters. They was always assuming the people around them was being disrespectful to them when they was the one being disrespectful. You know, genuine connection, people that want to have a genuine connection tend to show empathy and respect. They're nice to everybody that they come across. That's usually like the best. You know, that's the best. Do they talk about money openly? Is a conversation always about money and lifestyle? You know, or do they talk about other things that are more important? Observe their reactions to your boundaries. You know, do they have any you know, do they respect any of it, or do they want what they want when they want it? And also gauge their interest in your life beyond the surface. You know, if you're only there and they're just talking about you, and excuse me, if they're only talking about themselves and what they got going on, or they're always interrupting whatever you're saying to bring it back to them. No. But yeah, you can date on a budget, but I will say this: some people will lie to you. They will lie to you. They'll say, "Oh, you know, I'm one of those people. I don't need to go on no fancy date." Trust me. Sometimes some things are a test too. You can always tell they're testing you. They're testing you to see if you're ever going to take them somewhere nice. And if it's me, I think the third date is when you really take them somewhere special or somewhere real, real nice. The first date, I always say, personally, we should pay for our own meals because, you know, you got to see if we connect first if we want a second date. Second date, you know, dinner and a movie. You know, maybe like dinner and a movie somewhere. You know, let's, you know, go somewhere like traditional. Let them pick what they like, Italian, Mexican, so yada, yada, yada. And you just go to that type of restaurant. The third one, you want to make it special. You want to plan everything. You don't want to ask them nothing. You plan it. Because by then, you should know the person. I think that works better. Everybody's different. You know, try to go, if you really like the person, pay attention to them, get to know what they like, and do it that way. Unsolicited advice. Take it or leave it.